And so, I don't know if I told you guys, I was doing a class, taking a class right now. And so for my assignment yesterday, I worked on this. So I kind of remade this slide. It's supposed to be funny. Okay. So this is me standing in front of the U.S. Department of Education in Washington, D.C., in front of the Topeka Capitol, in front of Bishop Carroll High School. Okay. This is an actual photo that I took, and then I got on some software and separated myself and put myself in these other pictures. Funny? That's what it's supposed to be. Okay, that's what the class is called. Comedy in the Classroom Through Technology. It's a 2-hour credit class. So that was some of the stuff I did yesterday. Okay. And then the third type, oh, this is pretty funny too. All right. The third type that we did yesterday was confederal system, which those of you that did the homework, you learned about that, okay? And all the powers at the state and local level. And so, guys, since we use federalism, this is the reason why we have so many arguments in this country about who gets to decide what, right? So, like, think about the pandemic. Can Joe Biden, the President of the United States, force everybody in the United States to wear these? Does he have the power to do that? No. Does the governor of Kansas have the power to do that? No. But at the local level, the director of the health department in Sedgwick County, he has the power to do it. Now, do they have the power to fine you if you don't wear a mask? No. Unless they pass a law. You understand? So this is a perfect example of, those arguments over who gets to decide what. You know what I mean? Okay. So this is what we did all this yesterday. Okay. So check out that video. And then what we're going to do now is finish with powers between or within levels of government. Okay. And as I was telling the students yesterday, this is probably the most confusing part of the notes in this chapter, okay? And we're going to be looking at the difference between presidential systems and parliamentary systems, okay? And then, before we leave today, I'm going to do kind of a broad overview. So, you guys, because I didn't post the video, you'll have time to watch it. We're going to have review on Monday and Tuesday, okay? And test Thursday and Friday next week, okay, over chapter 1. All right. You're going to have plenty of time to study for this. It's not a huge amount of material. And if you study, you should do pretty well. Okay. All right. So starting with presidential systems. Okay, and this is one of the things I'm going to talk about a little bit later today is the 3 branches that we have, okay? So you've got the United States Congress, you got the executive branch, okay? The Congress is the legislative branch, and then you have the judicial branch, okay? In a presidential system, which is what we use, the legislative and executive branches are separate and independent, okay? Who's the vice president right now? Say it. Hungry? Oh, crap. First person that answers the question gets food today. Okay. All right. Now, Kamala Harris, does anybody know what job she had before she ran for vice president? What position she was in? Government? She was a United States Senator from California. Okay, one of 2 senators. Okay. because each state has 2 senators. Okay, she cannot be in both branches at the same time. Okay, she had to give up her Senate seat when she joined the executive branch. Everybody follow that? When Barack Obama ran for president in 2008, he was a senator from Illinois. And when he was elected president, he had to give up that Senate seat. These 2 branches are separate and independent. The founders of our country really put a big emphasis on separation of powers, so that if you have concentration of power, guys, it tends to get abused. If you have division of power, it's hard for one group, one of these branches, to dominate. Does that make sense? So our system is pretty unique in that way. And the founders, they looked at history and they said, well, if we can separate the power, then it's less likely to become tyrannical and dominate our lives. Okay, so this was a smart decision on their part. Okay, the president is not chosen by the legislature. Congress does not choose the president. Who chooses the president in our system? The people through they're kind of representatives. We call them the what? The Electoral College. And they are somewhat representatives, okay? But really the only thing they do is represent our vote every 4 years, okay? And I'll explain that to you guys better. But, yeah, okay? So, president is chosen by somebody different, okay? Members of one branch can't be a member of another. Just talked about that, okay? They're separate and independent, okay? So U.S. has this system, okay? Now, do some branches have more power than others? That's a tough question. It's really a matter of opinion. And I have one. Does anybody else have an opinion? Like, which branch, the legislative, the executive, or the judicial, which one has the most power? I know you don't know a lot about it, but some people would say executive. Over the years, the presidency has gained more and more power. I think the framers, if you were to ask them which one they would want to have the most power, if one had the most power, it would be the legislative branch, because they're the ones that are closest to the people, right? There's 435 members of the House. There's 100 senators. They represent us in Washington, and we're closer to that. There's only one president for the whole country. So let's give more power to the legislative branch. But over time, things change. Now, what about the judicial branch? There's one U.S. Supreme Court. You guys know how many members there are on the Supreme Court? 9. And how long are their terms? For life. And are they elected? Do the people get to elect them? No, they're selected by the president and have to be approved by the Senate. So they're not even elected officials. They serve for life. And the judicial branch gets to determine whether the actions of the executive are unconstitutional or the laws of the legislator are unconstitutional. That's a pretty powerful group of 9 people. You know what I mean? And more, when one side doesn't like the other side, the decisions they're making, they sue. And it goes to the federal courts. Okay? So, like, if Kansas decided to ban abortion, okay, somebody would sue the state of Kansas, and it would work its way up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court would decide who was right. You understand? So the decisions the Supreme Court makes generally change culture. Like, they have a huge impact on society, our society, okay? So I don't know if one has more power than others. If I had to say, in my opinion, I would say the Supreme Court. Okay, and that's why it's so important who is president and who is in the Senate, who controls the Senate, because they're the ones that approve these judges or appoint these judges and approve them. Okay, now this is important right here. Okay, the President of the United States is both chief executive, the head of the executive branch, and runs the day-to-day affairs of the country, president, and he's also the head of state. So if Martians came down from Mars and said, take me to your leader, who would you take them to? To the President of the United States. Okay, that's our head of state. He's our ceremonial leader. Okay, all right, so that's the presidential system. The other side we're going to look at is the parliamentary system. Okay, and it's different. And most countries use parliamentary system. Okay, so we'll focus on Britain here because that's the thing we're most familiar with, but I'll bring up some other countries as well. So you got all different kinds of names here, guys, that you can use for the head of the executive branch or the head of parliament. Okay. So in Britain, it's prime minister. In France, it's premier. In Germany, anybody know what they call their chief executive? Good, chancellor. Okay. And their current chancellor is a lady named Angela Merkel. Okay. You get a piece of chocolate for that one. Oh, hands. Okay. If the prime minister loses support, okay, no, wait, let me back up. Okay. Prime minister is elected by the parliament or the legislature, depending on what it's called. In Germany, it's called the Reichstag. Okay. In Britain, it's called the Parliament. In Canada, it's called the Parliament. Okay. They choose the chief executive. So, in order to become Prime Minister of Britain, Great Britain, okay, in order to be elected Prime Minister, you must be a MP, not military police, a member of Parliament. Okay, you have to be a member of Parliament in order to be elected. So remember how we said the Kamala Harris had to leave the Senate, Obama had to leave. You actually have to be in the legislature or in the Parliament in order to be elected by the Parliament. So they are connected, which is pretty good. I like that system because as a member of Parliament, you have to answer to that body. You know how often the President of the United States goes in front of Congress and has to answer to them? You know how often they have to do that? Never. The President goes in front of Congress one time a year during the State of the Union address. And that should be coming up like any day now. It's usually in January. So I don't know what they're waiting on. Okay. Biden must be working on a speech. Okay. Now you guys know somebody usually writes that for the president, right? You know, every president. They have speech writing. Yes? We've had that for a long time. Okay. So it's not just Biden. But we'll see if he goes off script, you know? Trump was famous for that. Just, you know, like, this is what's on the teleprompter, and then I'm going to talk about this for a minute. You know what I mean? That's where they get in trouble, when they get off script. And Joe Biden, throughout his political career, has been a guy to go off script. I like that about Joe Biden. Okay? He, you know, now he gets himself in trouble when he does that, just like Trump did, because he says what he's really thinking instead of what the speech says. Okay? You may not agree with what he's thinking, but at least you know it's his words, which is like real. You know, it's not all. That's the difference here. This is like real. They have to they have to stand. The prime minister has to stand in front of parliament, okay, and answer to them, which I like, okay. So, guys, with this, they do have terms, like 4-year terms, 2-year terms, stuff like that. But in these parliamentary systems, they can call for new elections at any time. Okay, if they lose confidence in the prime minister, they're like, hey, let's get a different one in here. They can do that. Okay. In fact, the prime minister themselves can call for new elections. So you're like, oh, so you're being critical of how I'm handling the pandemic. Okay, well, let's put it up for a vote. Let's have an election. You think you got somebody better than me? Let's go. Okay. Takes some guts to do that. Okay. But if you look at countries like Israel, guys, where, Israel lives almost in a constant state of war. Okay. And so there's a lot of turmoil. And so there tends to be turnover, okay, with prime ministers. Now, recently there hadn't been. They've had a really strong prime minister for about 10 years. Anybody know his name? Prime Minister of Israel. Benjamin Netanyahu. Heard that name before? Netanyahu? Yeah. All right. So the head of state here is different than the prime minister. In Britain, who is the head of state? The Queen. Okay. So in Japan, the head of state is the emperor. Okay. They have a king of Egypt. Okay. Doesn't have any power. Okay. Where this gets confusing, guys. In Britain, the head of state is the Queen. In Germany, the head of state is the president of Germany. The chancellor is the chief executive, runs the day-to-day affairs, but the president is the head of state, the figurehead, the ceremonial leader. They generally do not have any power, or very little power. They have influence, but not power. Yes? Okay. So those are your key differences between a parliamentary system and a presidential system. Okay. These parliamentary systems, they're connected. You got to be in the body to be elected by the body, and you're going to have a head of state and a chief executive. Okay. Chief executives run the day-to-day affairs. Okay. Okay. And that is the notes. Now, I need to do this with you guys. This is what I should have done right after we did the political spectrum. But we need to do this with you guys just to make sure everybody's got the basics down here, okay? As a government teacher, sometimes you take for granted just, what people know and they don't know, okay? So let's get this down. Just brief history. 1776, 1775, okay? You've got British colonies, 13 of them. They're having all kinds of problems with the British. The Revolutionary War starts on April 19, 1775. Okay, battles of Lexington and Concord. They're trying to keep us under control. The British are. We do the Declaration of Independence in 1776, July 4th, they sign it. Okay. In 1781, during the Revolution, which lasted until 1783, okay, lasted 8 years, the Revolution, okay. 1781, they wrote the Articles of Confederation. Had all kinds of problems with it, okay. By 1787, they had realized this Constitution is not working for us. Things are falling apart. So they got back together and had the Constitutional Convention in 1787, okay? And in this convention, they set up a 3-branch government, okay? So you got the legislative branch, the executive branch, and judicial branch, okay? Now, this is an outline of the Constitution up here if you ever want to take a look at it, okay? There's 7 articles in the Constitution. The first 3 are the three branches. This is an outline. It's not a very long document. The first two columns here are all about the legislative branch. It's the most detailed of anything in the Constitution, okay? The third column here is the other two branches, and then the last column is the rest of the Constitution. Article 4 is important. It's got a lot of important information we'll talk about in it, okay? So just the basics here, okay? What's another name for the legislative branch? Starts with a C. Congress, okay? It's the same thing. It's the same thing. Congress is the legislative branch, okay? It's a bicameral legislature. Bi means two, okay? Auto means one, okay? You've got the House of Representatives, and you've got the Senate, okay? Anybody know how many members are there in the United States House of Representatives? 435. Okay, let's do this, all right? I'm going to ask you, like, every time you come to class. How many members are there in the United States House of Representatives? Everybody says it together, okay? Now, how many stars are on the flag? 50 states, 50 stars. Each state gets 2 senators, no matter their size. So how many senators are there? 100. Yeah. So there's 535 members of Congress, 2 houses. Okay. These people have 2-year terms. These people have 6-year terms. Okay. In order to pass a law, the same bill has to pass both houses. Okay. Their job is to make laws, legislative laws, right? Laws. Okay. Now, they also get to keep an eye on the executive branch. So, as you guys are aware, there's going to be a second impeachment trial of President Trump coming up, I don't know, next week or something, okay? That is one of the roles of Congress, is they can impeach, okay? Now, as we go through this, guys, we get to like chapter 5, I'm going to lay out for you like specific powers that the House has, specific powers that the Senate has, okay? I already told you one today. The Senate has to approve Supreme Court justices, okay, or federal judges, okay? All right, so you've got the executive branch, okay? Now, what does the executive branch do? It executes the law, or carries out the law. So that's an easy way, what does it do? It executes the law, okay, or carries it out, okay? And who's the head of the executive branch? The president, okay? And our president is both head of state and chief executive. Chief executive, head of the executive branch, okay, which carries out the law, enforces the law, okay? You got VP, all right? There's no real role for the vice president. The vice president has a role in the Senate. Okay, there will, I think, going to be some very much occasions where Kamala Harris is breaking tie votes in the Senate. Because right now there are 50 Republicans and 50 Democrats in the Senate. Okay, so that is a very important role that she will be playing over the next at least 2 years. Okay. Other than that, her only real duty constitutionally is to be there in case something happens to the president, which has happened 7 times in American history. Okay? Now, then you have the cabinet. Okay? another name for the cabinet are executive departments. Okay? And you know a lot of these. Every time you hear somebody called the Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, Secretary of, no. Oh, you say Commerce? Yes. No, you say Congress. Commerce, yes. Education, transportation, energy, Veterans Affairs, Health and Human Services, Homeland Security, which is the last one that was created after 9/11, Homeland Security. There's 15 of them, okay? Now, they're all called, the heads of those departments are called secretary, except for one. The Department of Justice, okay, the head of the DOJ is the Attorney General. That's the only one you don't call. And the Attorney General is the head of the Justice Department. You know what's inside the Justice Department? The FBI is. Okay? The FBI answers to the Attorney General. Okay? The Attorney General answers to the President. All right? So, the President gets to appoint these heads of these departments. Okay? Biden is in the process of doing that right now. Now, the Senate has to approve those. All of these department heads. Okay? So this is where we get your senior checks and balances. Okay? Now, usually, guys, the Senate is going to allow Joe Biden to have who he wants to be his advisor. You know what I mean? Generally. Now, when it comes to Attorney General, it can be a little contentious. When it comes to judges, it becomes very contentious because those people serve for life. Okay? And I told you the impact that they can have. Okay? Then under that, guys, this is the largest employer in the United States of America, the executive branch of government. More people than Walmart has, more people than Amazon has. Okay? This has around 3 million employees work in the executive branch. So I mentioned the FBI, CIA, NSA, okay? The Federal Aviation Administration, NASA, okay? All of these, I mean, there are hundreds of these agencies, federal agencies, okay, that carry out the law. You guys heard of the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, executive branch. IRS, the Internal Revenue Service that collects taxes, right? I mean, all of this. It's a huge bureaucracy, our national government, okay? But most of it is here, okay? Then you have the judicial branch, okay? Which, guys, the Constitution really only mentions one court. That Constitution says we will have a Supreme Court. Now, it says that Congress can create courts beneath it. So all the courts that we have beneath the Supreme Court at the federal level were created by Congress. All the ones that we have at the state level were created by states, not by the federal government, okay? So there's one Supreme Court and there's 9 on the U.S. Supreme Court, okay? Their job is to interpret the law and the Constitution. So let's say Joe Biden did say, everybody in America has to wear a mask in their homes. Okay? The Supreme Court, somebody would challenge that and say, you can't make people do that. You don't have the power to do that. But he says, we're going to enforce it. We're going to have the FBI, we have local law enforcement enforcing this. Everybody wears a mask everywhere. Okay? I'm making this up. So this would get to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court would say, no. Joe, you can't do that. You don't have the power to do that. Okay? If Congress passed a law, they may have the power to do it, but that law is probably going to be unconstitutional. Okay? So we have this system, okay, that prevents abuse of power. Okay? Now, I'll get into this like right at the end of your high school career here. There are 13 circuit courts, okay, with 24 judges on each court. And then there's 94 these are all federal courts, district courts, in 94 different cities. Okay, we have one in Wichita, federal district court, okay. Only 5% of all court cases in this country are federal. Most of the time you're dealing with, I don't know, traffic court, okay, or you have divorce court, you have juvenile courts, you have small claims courts, you have, state courts, city courts, and stuff like that, okay? So, this is your three branches, okay? And I just want to make sure, like, when I say something, at least you have an idea what I'm talking about, okay? When I say certain things, right? And you know where people belong, okay? And which branch and what they do, okay? So that's something I should have done before I started this chapter, but better late than never, okay? So that'll do it. So tomorrow is a day where I'm done with the notes. I want to do the first review with both classes in person. After that, you may be doing the review from home. If you're home that day, I do it in person, okay? So I always put the review sheet up on the module, although I'll try and make copies for you to give that you can take with you. And that is the only thing that you'll have to turn in person. So once I give you the review sheet, you give it back to me the day of the test, okay? And I'll give you 5 points, okay? So tomorrow I actually had this, you guys, I don't know, I teach classes, my honors classes are for college credit through Friends University. And so I guess my name's like on a list. And so I got this email a couple weeks ago from a Harvard professor sharing some of his videos. And I watched a couple of them. They were pretty good. They're like 25 minutes long. So that's probably what I'm going to do tomorrow is just show a video that hopefully reinforces these different forms of government that we talked about, different systems, and just as a little bit of a recap, okay? So watch the video from yesterday before the test for sure, because I really explained that stuff well. And then we'll do a review, let you know what to expect on the test, and Monday and Tuesday, and you guys take chapter 1 test on Thursday. And if you guys want to do that homework assignment, some of you've done it over the second treatise on civil government. You can do that. Cool? All right. We're done a little early. I had 3 people in here this morning, live.